We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Thursday as you're listening to this. We're recording this Wednesday night, and we have the good fortune of having yet another guest, a guest that you well know and people always look forward to. Tony, who is in South Carolina, yet another old guy. This guy with some military background. He's a lot like me in that he has a lot of opinions and a bit of an attitude. So welcome.
Well, it's a pleasure to be on here. I mean, I've been on here quite a bit.
Yeah.
The issues change, but the bitching and moaning by the two of us never does. I mean, but
Well,
that's why we're boomers.
I think that people will come to me all the time and say, "How much can you bitch about Donald Trump? You just go on every day and bitch about Donald Trump." And I say, "Well, that's not necessarily true. I mean, it is to a certain extent, but I think what we do here, and you do, and I do, is we give people a lot of information about what's actually going on that they can't get off the mainstream media, and they give them some takes on it as far as you know like we talked about before, this is a clickbait society. So they see the headline and that's all they know. But there's always more to the story. And then you got to look at it and try to understand what that in fact means. So I think that's what we do. It's not bitching and moaning every day,
Well,
but
we do a pretty thorough analysis of whatever the issue is that we bring up during the show. So we have a lot to complain about nowadays, but I think an analysis, our job is to put things in perspective. So it's not to blow things up too much. It's not to say and underwhelm a subject when certainly it's important, but we try to keep it a perspective. We try to keep it even keeled. You're more of a master at it than I am. You always have been. Um, we're not always right, but we're frequently right. We're right enough for us and our people that are on the blue side of the fence, to be honest.
and my intention isn't to change people's minds or make them think anything special. What I want to do is give them the information, give them my take on it. And if you're doing this right, you take it back, you look at it, and then you make your own decision. Don't let me make your decision. That's one thing I've always told my kids. Don't take advice from anybody. Take all the information you can get. Don't take advice because it's different for everybody. Take in as much information as you can, then make your own choice for yourself because that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing about being on the blue side of things, and the good thing about your audience in particular, is we have an audience of people who have, fairly strong critical thinking. They don't,
Yeah.
they understand what we're saying, and they could read and they can make their own decisions. And if they don't like what we're saying and they think we're full of shit, well, then they think we're full of shit. But I would say we're not, and we provide them again with a perspective. Maybe it comes from us because we're boomers, so there's going to be a little bit of a bias because we're a little bit older. But older
Yeah.
means we've lived through a lot, for years and years and years and decades, to be honest. So we've seen a lot, and there's some wisdom in that, but there's also some bias.
Well, that's what I tell my kids too. I said, you may not want to hear what I have to tell you. I may not be the smartest man in the world, but I'm old. And I can almost guarantee you everything you're going through right now, I've been through. And isn't it valuable to know what I experienced and what I did? If I did the wrong thing, then you don't have to do that. That gets out of your whole mindset. If I did the right thing, well, maybe you can emulate that. I mean, that's always been the case with me when I was younger. My dad wasn't around much. I worked with
Right.
older guys. Every time I had a problem, I went to the older guys and go, what's up with this? What do I need to know? And that was always helpful. I mean, I think people should always be curious and they should always be informed and get that information any way you can.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why primitive tribal societies value age for wisdom. And then at some
Absolutely.
point, when they get too old, the tribe banishes the old person to the elements, I mean, they leave
Cool
them
with
behind
that.
when they migrate, which is, what we probably should have done with Joe Biden back in the
Yeah,
day,
maybe,
right?
maybe. A lot of them. Schumer, Pelosi,
Yeah, yeah.
Grassley. There's a lot of people we should put out on the ice flow and let them go.
Right, exactly. Or as we migrate, the tribe leaves them behind and the wolves get them. It's the kind of thing. And that's the problem but there is just value in having lived long enough to have seen how the country has changed, what's kind of similar. And if you're a student of history like you are and I am, we can make comparisons to
Yeah.
past times in American society. Look, like everybody else, I was totally devastated by the results of the election. And I think I was devastated like you were because every indication was that we were going to win. That's what it was. And it has taken some time to take my emotional depression and start to think it through again. And you and I were talking about Blue Sky, and I'm on Blue Sky. I've got close to 10,000 followers on Blue Sky, and they're still depressed over there. I mean,
Yeah.
there's not solutions coming out. There's a lot of people bitching and moaning of all ages. But the fact is, we're going to survive what's happening right now. It's going to be rough. It's not going to be to our liking. But in a political sense, if you look at political history, there is such a thing as overreach. And overreach can come and bite you in the ass. And he's overreaching. Farmers aren't getting what they need as far as subsidies. Corporations might be in trouble, be it steel or auto. Maybe millions of federal workers will be out on the street. They're screwing up, and there's going to come a backlash. So wait on that. Wait on it. It's okay. Don't panic yet. History has a way of writing itself. Now, does that mean we'll win in 26 and 28? Well, maybe not. But let's just say we don't. We're going to be okay. It's going to be depressing. You have to take care of your health. You have to take care of your family. You have to make sure your children get what they need. It's going to be a difficult ride. Certainly with the bimbos and the idiots that he's put in place, the department's total incompetence. There's certain dangers that are going to be there. But if you look where the country started when the society was totally different, we're not going back to that. There was a little bit of a regression. Certainly, science is going to be totally ignored, but there'll be a backlash. It'll come around, and you don't have to worry. Don't panic. Don't depress. Don't throw yourself off a building because of what's going on. Listen, I worry about my son. Yeah, and we've talked about him before. He's in the Army. Um, you've got Headskag, what's his name, in charge of the Department of Defense.
Exeth.
Yeah, he's a total tool. He has no comprehension of military strategy or any of those things, and he really should be uh, guiding the president from making stupid decisions. Instead, he is just like everybody else in the administration. He's just another yes person. So my son is thinking about getting out, and I'm all for it. I love that he's in the military. I'm proud of his military service, just like I'm proud of my military service. But I don't want him to die for the tools that are in the current administration. And so if you take that, that's going to be a recruiting problem, you know?
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean it's going to be people like me, middle class, and it'll be people who don't know any better, the bros that are so, that might decide to join, but most of those are basement dwellers. They're not probably fit for
No.
service either. So where's he going to go? So that'll be a problem that'll come up. Should they look at the Department of Defense? Should DOJ look at that? Absolutely. There is so
They
much
won't do
waste.
anything with it. They won't do anything with it because that's where all the waste ends up going, them and to the wealthy people. Let me just say a
Yeah,
couple things. First of all,
absolutely.
Hegseth is a tool and he's running the Department of Defense. He may be the worst tool, but he's not the first tool to run that department. There have been
No.
other people that are more experienced, but just as much a yes man. And we will get through that. One of the things that frustrates me most when people come out with this gloom and doom, and that's what you get in the media. Oh my God, this happened. End of the world's coming. Um, People live too much in the past. They were still worrying about the election. I'm not thinking about the election. I'm thinking about what's in front of me. And you better be rough and ready and pissed off and ready to fight. If you're still crying about what happened yesterday or 2 months ago, you're no good to anybody. You got to just
No.
let it go. We can't change what happened in the back in the past. We've got to stand up right now and fight whatever's in front of us.
Well, no, you're making a tremendous points here. It's done. It's finished.
Yeah.
We now have to stand up and face what we're going to have. And we will. The protests are starting to happen. Listen, Republicans as a party still exist as a party, and he doesn't give one shit about that party. As he
No.
tanks himself, he tanks them worse. And their career, the only reason they bow down to him is they're afraid for their careers. You give it another you give it another half year of this kind of chaos, and they're in serious trouble. And he has a habit of picking people to run. And so it's not like they're going to put forward their best people to run for senator and representatives. He doesn't have a great track record with that.
It was announced that Tulsi Gabbard was confirmed as the director of national intelligence, and everybody. I mean, it's ridiculous that she is. She's known to be a Russian asset, and people are freaking out. Oh my God, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? And I'm not looking at the bright side of this because there's no bright side with Tulsi Gabbard in there. But here's my thought. Okay, Tulsi Gabbard is in charge of intelligence and she is a Russian asset. Let's just say that's true. So what? Donald Trump's a fucking Russian asset. If it's not her, somebody else will be a Russian asset because Donald Trump will direct them. Our issue isn't Tulsi Gabbard with in terms of intelligence and this country and our adversaries. It's fucking Donald Trump.
And it wouldn't matter even if they'd placed somebody in there who was a conservative and big on intelligence affairs,
Right.
he wouldn't listen anyway.
Right.
He made up his mind about something and that's it. So yeah, it doesn't matter if she's in there, she's incompetent, she's going to give him bad information, but it wouldn't matter what kind of information he gets. He has to get it in basically with crayons and a and a coloring book anyway. So what's the difference? No, you're right. She's terrible. And she could do some damage when you mix her in with the Department of Defense because those are the two primary national security advisors to the president, right? So when there's a situation and they go down to the situation room, they're both sitting in that room with Trump and they're both tools. But it wouldn't make any difference. He's going to see what he wants to see. He's going to do what he wants to do. He's, as you have pointed out many a time, he's his own worst enemy.
Well, yeah, he is. And the thing about it is I try to look at the bright side in most situations, and this certainly isn't a bright side. But I'm thinking we got Donald Trump doing what he's doing. He puts these bozos in these department heads, and I'm thinking, maybe the worst people he puts in makes this whole fucking thing crash faster, and we can start digging our way out quicker.
Bingo.
That's
Bingo.
that sounds like a bullshit answer, but it's really the only answer we have right now. There's no other options.
No, that's exactly right. He puts them in and we crash. I mean, look at Ukraine, which I am so afraid of them abandoning them.
Yeah.
They have offered up the mineral rights in an area controlled by the Russians. So now the question is, does he want the mineral rights or does he still want to be Putin's, butt buddy? I think he's the kind of greedy, grasping, Scrooge-like character that's going to want the mineral rights more so than he'll care about Putin. He might be breaking the chain to Putin. We don't know yet. It's too early to make that determination, but he might. Um, Putin's not going to let American companies go in there and send the minerals. The reason he started the fight in the first place was to gain the areas that he's controlling that have all those rare minerals.
Did you hear that Donald Trump? This was interesting. Donald Trump spoke to Vladimir Putin,
Yes,
and people say, "What did they talk about?" Well, we don't know because they're always fucking secret conversations.
that's right.
However, there was some comments made after that. Yeah, we talked about the Russia-Ukraine war and a possibility of a ceasefire and all that kind of stuff. And I thought it was funny because that conversation, they said, "Oh, it went pretty well. We're looking pretty good." Yeah, Vladimir Putin was in that conversation. Donald Trump was in that conversation. Zelensky was not in that conversation. And it's reminiscent of Afghanistan. Remember what happened there? They were talking about ending the war there and a ceasefire, and he had a conversation with the fucking Taliban, but not from the leaders from Afghanistan. And then he goes ahead and releases the 5,000 criminal Taliban. We get out of there under Joe Biden and the Taliban, all allowed to do this by Donald Trump going and take over. Donald Trump will fuck up everything he does. I can't imagine Zelensky's going to give up any land to Russia in any kind of deal. And when Donald Trump tells us, "Oh, we'll get this deal done quickly," What he's thinking is, I'll put the pressure on Zelensky and he'll give Vladimir Putin what he wants, and then it'll be over and I'll be a hero. I don't think Zelensky's that dumb. I don't think he'll give away anything to fucking Russia at this point.
I think Zelensky has understood that he's probably going to be thrown under the bus by this administration, and he is making side deals with the European Union and maybe South Korea and well, maybe even India. And that's where his weapon flow will come in. Listen, the we've lost our credit. We've lost something that is very important, which is our credibility and standing in the world. That the United
Right.
States stands for freedom and democracy and all the rest. That's gone. No longer are they going to trust the U.S. Therefore, a good outcome out of this, to be honest with you, is the Europeans will increase their budgets for defense because they can't count on the U.S. to put an umbrella. That's not a bad thing. It's bad for for the U.S. as far as being trusted and being a member of NATO and all the rest. But if the Europeans sink a bunch of money for their own defense, that's a good thing. And as the process of doing that, they fully understand that the best thing they can do is continue to send arms and to send money to Ukraine, because the more Russians the Ukrainians kill, the less they have to worry about later on
Right.
themselves. The more the Ukrainians destroy infrastructure in Russia, the more that they destroy armament and tanks and aircraft and all that. That's less than they got to worry about. There's this talk about Russia invading Europe. They can't. They couldn't even handle Ukraine. They're not going to
No,
invade. And I think NATO is going to stand strong. NATO might stand strong without us, but they'll stand strong. They'll fight for Estonia and Lithuania and all those little small Baltic states. And I think the Russians won't know what hit them. So, there's no reason to panic. And I think the Ukrainians are now strong enough to stand up, even though they lose territory. And they might just say, you know what, we're just going to give up this territory just to give us a couple of years to rebuild our own country. And they will, and they'll be back bigger and stronger. They might not be in NATO, but they'll become a place. They'll be like Great Britain in World War II. There will be a place where all armaments go and are stored and become a place to be counted on, a real stronghold against the Russians, even though they lose Crimea and Donetsk and some of those other places, Dunbar province, all the rest.
the interesting thing about Ukraine, I don't know if people remember this. Ukraine had nuclear weapons at one point,
It did.
and America and Russia went to them and said, listen, we don't want you having them. It's all dangerous and stuff, but don't worry, we'll protect you. So they got rid of the nuclear weapons. And here we are with Russia invading them. Big surprise, Vladimir Putin and the Americans lied to them. Well, we did kind of help them, but we should have been able to shut this down before it even happened. Uh, I'm thinking Ukraine's got to do whatever they can to get a nuclear weapons again, and not fucking and put up a serious defense to Russia. They aren't going to mess around with somebody with nuclear weapons necessarily. Because I'll be honest with you, Russia doesn't have a lot of money. They're struggling financially, and their go-to is, well, we got nuclear weapons. I've heard some people talk about their nuclear weapons. There's a certain amount of maintenance and repairs and things you have to do to keep up with that. I'll
There is.
bet you their nuclear weaponry isn't really up to par. Not to say they couldn't do the damage, but it's maybe not as uh, incredible as what they're saying.
I wouldn't doubt that they have a nuclear weapons program, but I will tell you, we'll never hear about it. It'll be like the South African program and the Israeli program. And the reason being, if the Russians think that the Ukrainians are getting nuclear weapons, they'll strike with nuclear weapons. I mean, they just will. If there is a
Good
program
point.
buried underneath a mountain someplace. And maybe France, maybe England, maybe the Israelis are helping them with that process. We're not going to hear about it. I mean, it's not going to be something that they are going to broadcast. They're not going to one day say, hey, we got 5 weapons, Russia. You better not invade us again, because the Russians got 1,000 or 2,000 or 5,000.
Right.
they're just not going to do it. If you look at the Iranians, they've been at this for a long time. They may have a weapon, but they probably don't. It's a complicated infrastructure that you need to build. And the Israelis have managed to interrupt that infrastructure a number of times through, secret operations. The Ukrainians may have one, they may not have one, but we'll never hear about it one way or the other. That will be kept in reserve, and it'll be the most closely guarded secrets that the Ukrainians only to be used in case the country is going to fall. And
You
then
you
and what?
you brought up Israel, and that's interesting as of late. Israel-Hamas war, they go into a ceasefire while Biden's in office. What Biden had to do is put a certain amount of pressure on Israel. Now Donald Trump is not putting any pressure on Israel or Benjamin Netanyahu. And it looks like the ceasefire could be off. And then Donald Trump throws a fucking wild card into this thing saying, what we're going to do is we're going to come in, ethnically cleanse the Gaza Strip, send the Palestinians to all these places where these people don't want them there. We're going to level it and we're going to turn it into something beautiful, and America will own it. That has to be probably the stupidest comment by any politician in the history of the world. That's
Yeah,
guaranteed to start some shit.
yeah. You got to kind of go back to Caligula putting his horse in charge of the Roman army and attacking the,
Yeah, well,
you know, channel. I mean, to
there's
get to
that too.
that level of delirious stupidity. I mean, it just freaking crazy. Not going to happen. Not gonna, first of all, when the Palestinians were not, and they were everywhere else, they were in Lebanon, everywhere else. You remember all the terrorism around the world that was
Right.
going on? I will tell you right now, the Arab countries don't want the Palestinians. They're, they're not going to take them. Egypt is not going to take them. Jordan's not going to take them. They could end up in Syria because Syria is a big mess, but I doubt that the Syrians will take them. They are an unwanted people. There is no place to put them. Nobody's going to take them. The second part is, why would we do the Israelis bidding and send our troops in there to try to root out the Palestinians while they stand by? It's not going to happen. First of all, I kind of think we would have our flag officers, the generals and admirals, if they were given that kind of order, I think they would resign en masse. Do I think the regular soldier would go where he's told? I do. But do I think the flag officers would get involved in that? I don't think so. I think they'll retire, quit, resign, be fired, all of the above, because that is that's just not going to happen. Will Congress do anything at that point? Maybe. I mean, I can't see Congress. I mean, the Republicans don't, it all depends on the Republican Party, but I don't see it. It's another trial balloon put out by Trump. And he does this all the time where he puts out a trial balloon and then sees what happens. And he has no shame, so it's perfectly okay for him to try it. And if there's nobody that pushes back on him, he may go ahead with something, but that's not going to happen. Now, this thing about attacking Hamas if the prisoners are not released, that's a possibility. I mean, that is a possibility, but with America, because there are Americans there, I can actually see special operations people going in there with the Israeli special operations to do something. Um, so that's a possibility that can happen within this week.
I think he said Thursday, right? You got to, even Netanyahu said that. You better have them out by Thursday. The problem with the Hamas, though, is the Israelis aren't really complying with the ceasefire. That nobody can trust anybody, and that's not a big surprise. The thing about it is, if Donald Trump put Americans or even soldiers in Gaza, you might as well put a target on their back. You talk about terrorism. There's going to be fucking problems. I mean, the Palestinians won't like it. The people where the Palestinians are going to go won't like it. Israel won't like it because Israel, as much as they want the Palestinians out of there, they hold that land sacred. They covet that land. They certainly don't want some big dumb white guys from America to take control of a land that they think is important to their religious beliefs. So you go in there, you're going to start all kinds of shit, and you're
Yeah,
going to have piss off all the Middle East. You got a problem.
yeah, it would be, there's a way of doing this with the Israelis, and there could be some judge because Hamas is not to be trusted. Well, he's,
No,
Netanyahu is not to be trusted, but you can do this. What ends up happening is they just have certain areas assigned to American special ops, or there's a special ops, and they work hand in hand with the Israelis to deconflict, so you don't have friendly fire on either side. It's been done before.
you can
Um,
do that, but you can't do that by saying America owns it and then put
no,
up a fucking golf club. That's
no,
not
no.
going to work.
This would be just the getting the prisoners back. This has nothing to do with his grand vision of
No.
Gaza, hotel strip. This has more to do with getting starting Thursday. So it's still bad. I mean, you're still putting U.S. troops in a place where they're kind of at a disadvantage. But we have a pretty big intelligence infrastructure, satellites, Signint, which is signal intelligence. We have that capability of going in there and working with the Israelis, but the Israelis would be better at it since they've been doing it for a while. I think what'll end up happening, if I had to guess as a military guy, is they'll just give the Israelis as much ammunition and weapons as they want to go in there and go after Gaza. Netanyahu wants to destroy Hamas. That's it. I mean, that's the bottom line. And he needs to stay in power because he's under indictment himself.
Right,
So
right.
yeah, and he's doubtful he'll win another election. So I mean, this is more of a how do I stay in power so that I don't go to jail kind of thing.
Well,
But
the idea that Donald Trump will say, "Okay, here's more weapons, here's more ammunition. Go in and get them out there." That would be okay, not okay, but that would be something a reasonably minded person would do.
yeah, yeah, it's
But you
going to
got to
kill.
remember, Donald Trump's all about the show. I wouldn't
Yeah,
be surprised if he sends jets in there and starts bombing the piss out of shit.
it's going to kill more Palestinians. It's just going to. And for those people in Michigan who didn't vote for Kamala Harris, this is the result. This is you did this, for the people who were anti, Israel and anti-genocide. You guys did this with your votes. You put this guy in office, and now this is what you get. And so, yeah, it's going to kill more Palestinians. There's going to be more horror coming out of there. Um, and the excuse is going to be whatever it is, 100 more prisoners left to come out. And so many of them are Americans, maybe 15 or 20 of them are Americans, something like that.
Now, when we're talking about hostages, Donald Trump got a school teacher released from Russia.
He did.
Okay. The question is, what did he trade? And they ain't telling anybody. If it was a good deal, they'd be telling us. He probably gave up some notorious fucking
I,
Russian spy to get this one guy back, so it looks good for him. But he's not
yeah,
going to tell you who he traded.
I think it was either, I might have been an arms dealer. The
Yeah,
information is out there. I mean, we could look it up if we needed to, but I think it was definitely a criminal, and I think he was an arms dealer that was in jail. You know, Send a bad guy back to Russia. I mean, if it gets our guy back, that's okay. I think there's maybe 5 or 6 more Americans over there. And if you have to give up some Russian spies, whatever, at this point, who gives a shit? Give them up, get our people back home. What I don't understand is why anybody fucking goes to these places. Why they
oh
visit,
yeah.
why they visit Russia. Why, I mean, when Putin took over, that should have been the end of anybody ever going over to Russia that from the United States. Even if I had relatives over there, I would love them from a distance, and we would be using Zoom to talk to each other. There ain't no way I'd be going there. I just
I
will
got to
never.
tell you, with my portfolio online of all my videos, I
Yeah,
go to Russia. I ain't getting out.
no, you're not getting out. No, you. Maybe if you want to lose some weight, you put you in Siberia. I
Yeah, yeah,
don't know that you
yeah,
you would live through the weight losing process, Mike.
yeah. That's true. The point I was making about Donald Trump in this trade, though, like you said, we got one of our guys out, and who cares who they got in return? That's well and good. But isn't Donald Trump supposed to be the master negotiator, the one that wins all the time, the one that gets the upper hand all the time? Yet he won't tell us exactly who it is. And presumably it's somebody far more notorious than this guy that is probably wrongly jailed. Donald Trump tells you he's very talented, and then he does whatever he has to do to look good. It's all performance with Donald Trump. There really is no substance. There is no ability. There is no planning or strategy.
There's nothing there. You're absolutely right. There's nothing there. And you, me, most people in on this audience, they understand that. He's never going to do anything of substance. It's all going to be take credit for bullshit kinds of things like trans in the military, and then don't take blame for anything. I mean, this whole thing with Musk is just a stalking horse. Musk is looking bad publicly. Not that Musk is a shit, but when things really go into shitter and the court cases start coming in and they start losing and there's more and more lawsuits coming, Musk is going to be the guy that Trump will blame. So, I mean, that's his only purpose for this. So, I mean, we know Trump now. We know he's not going to do anything for us. There's only one thing that I can see on the horizon, and that is cut the size of the federal budget so that they can take whatever money that they save and give it back to wealthy people for a tax cut. Same thing, it's the
Yeah.
same thing over again. That's all they're doing. There's nothing
Well,
else happening.
I think Elon Musk is already in trouble based on what happened yesterday. I think it was. You probably heard about the press conference that
He did. He
Donald
did.
Trump had with Elon Musk and his kid
Yeah.
in the Oval Office. That in itself is kind of inappropriate. Why is Elon Musk taking questions? Uh, and somebody made an interesting observation, and I hadn't thought about it, but knowing Donald Trump and the simple mind he deals with, the picture was Donald Trump sitting at the Resolute desk and Elon Musk standing off on the side, standing up with the kid, right? He's probably trying to show that in spite of what Time magazine had with Elon behind the Resolute desk, that it's him behind the Resolute desk. So he thought he gained something. But in fact, he made himself look worse because here's Elon Musk standing above him, doing most of the talking. Donald Trump's just kind of hunched over, mumbling or whatever the fuck he's doing. He thought it would make him look better by doing this, and he looked way worse. All right. We lost Tony there. We're going to see if he comes back. Oh, here comes Tony back again.
Yeah. What
Um,
happened there?
I don't know. I was just going along and you all of a sudden froze and you were gone.
Yeah. I mean, my Wi-Fi is good. I'm not having any problems with it.
Well, sometimes
That's weird.
Zoom gets a little glitchy sometimes, so that may be it. But you're back.
Yeah.
That's the important
Yeah.
thing. I filled the 20 seconds. I'm a pro. I can handle
Yeah,
that
I mean,
shit.
you were talking about Musk, and I wanted to talk about Booger Boy, that his son.
Well, yeah, I want to get to him last because that's hilarious. But
That's hilarious.
in terms of the optics with Elon and Donald Trump thought he was doing something. He was fixing that Time magazine thing with him behind that Resolute desk,
Yeah,
and it
yeah.
just went all kinds of wrong for him.
Oh, it was horrible. I mean, from what I heard, Elon Musk is stammering and having a difficult time speaking. And let's face it, he's not that smart. What
No,
he
he's
had
not.
was money. He got money from his family. He got in with some other people, started a business that made money, and then he put his money into Tesla and SpaceX and the rest, and hired a bunch of people. And then he takes credit for what they do. They're the brains behind the outfit. It's not him. He's not that bright. And it's like every
That's
other
a
rich.
familiar. That's a familiar story, isn't it?
It,
Sounds
it,
just like Donald
it,
Trump.
it's like every rich person out there. They all think because they're rich that they are experts in every single area of society. If you're a good science guy, well, then you're a good science guy. That doesn't mean no shit about politics or how to run a government agency. But uh, that is the fault of Congress, particularly the GOP, for allowing this to happen. A guy with no clearance, a guy with no expertise, a guy that has not been vetted by them is being allowed to take away their power of the purse. And that's their fault. And so when the Democrats do that later on and they start hitting up Republican initiatives, then great, because the Democrats I think the first thing they should do if they ever get power again is a massive tax increase on the wealthy. I mean, that's the only thing that's going to come out of this. That's all this money. We're talking
Well,
about 800 billion out of Medicaid. So that's money that goes to the states, right? Um,
right.
the states can't cover that because that was part of Obamacare was to pay for 90% of the increase of using Medicaid for poor people. So that might effectively end the Medicaid program. Maybe
Well,
kids get covered, but that's about it.
I heard somebody talking about this today, and they said what they're really proposing is um, it's really not that much money because they're proposing that for people under 40 that are able to work, that would cut that out. But if you're disabled or something, it wouldn't. I don't, that's the thing. When you hear something in the media, they say they're cutting everything, and that may or may not be true. That's the problem. We don't get the full story here, and that's something I need to dig into because it's one thing to say they're cutting Medicaid altogether, or if and either way, even if they do what they suggest, what I just suggested, that's too much. It's wrong. He doesn't have the capability to do that. That's a congressional thing, but um, it's just frustrating. Everybody's out to try to scare everybody, and we have reason to be worried, but I don't think we need to be scared. I want to bring up your what you brought up before, Elon's little kid X. It was hilarious, that whole thing. He's bouncing around. People always say to me, "Why does Elon always have his kid around?" There's a lot of people suggesting a couple things. Some people said he was a horrible father. Maybe he's trying to change that optic. Some other people have said that kid's a fucking shield because I guarantee you he's got his target on his head and his back from a lot of people, rich people, poor people, foreign people. Elon Musk is not safe. I have to believe he's not safe. He's pissed off so many people, but he has this kid and he's picking his nose. And somebody said, well, he's picking his nose. He's fucking 4. Of course he picks his
Yeah,
nose.
sure
I
is.
got a 4-year-old granddaughter. She's always picking her nose and
Absolutely.
farting. That's why I call her Tootie. Um,
Absolutely.
so that's not a big deal. But I heard this story and I go, well, that's bullshit. That's not fucking true. And then I looked up Tiziant, who's on TikTok, and he had video. And this little kid's bouncing around doing whatever. Donald Trump's sitting at the Resolute desk as Elon is pontificating, and the kid walks over to Donald Trump and says, "You're not the president. You should go away." And then later he says one of two things. He says he either goes up and says, "Shush your mouth now," or something like that, or "Shut your fucking mouth." I don't know which it is. And either way, it's disrespectful as hell for a 4-year-old to say that to the president of the United States. And all Donald Trump did, turn his head and act like he didn't hear it. Well, that pussy ass bitch. Now we
He
know
didn't
how to
raise his
get to
own
him.
kids, Donald Trump. I mean, he didn't raise any, only Ivanka. I mean, that's it. As far as Don Jr. and Eric and Tiffany, he didn't raise them. He's a terrible dad. His dad was a terrible dad. Elon's dad was a terrible dad. There's a commonality to here. It's fathers screwing up their kids, and then their kids grow up to be horrible human beings. And we suffer when they gain power through money or influence. So, this kid's going to probably grow up to be horrible. Donald's son, what's his name?
Baron?
Barron. He's probably going to be an asshole too. He's going to roam around. I was the president's kid. And he's going to be a trust baby himself.
Well, yeah, Barron is an interesting case. He started out under 18. Everybody goes, just leave Barron alone. He's a decent kid. Turns out he's not a fucking decent kid. He's kind of an asshole. And there was some comment. I don't know what he said exactly, but at the inauguration, I don't know if you saw him walk up to Joe Biden and say something. Some people
I,
are
I
saying it's on, whatever. But Joe didn't look too pleased about it. That's how disrespectful and stupid this whole fucking family is.
Yeah, they're trash. They really are. They're trash and
They
low
really
class.
are.
And unfortunately for us, the trash and low class in this country put them in charge. And so now they're going to lose their hospitals. We talked about Medicaid just a second ago. And the importance is if you're in a rural area, there aren't jobs for you to get. And you don't have any money, you can't move to an area where you could get jobs like a blue state. You couldn't afford to live in a blue state anyway. The other problem with that Medicaid's the only thing keeping their rural hospitals alive,
Right.
because everybody in the county is on Medicaid. So no Medicaid, no hospital. So, fuck you guys. You guys, 90% of y'all voted for this guy, and this is what you get. And their kids are terrible. I mean, look at Don Jr. He's a freaking drug addict. Eric is an imbecile. Tiffany, I don't know what to say about her. I don't know how Laura, who's married to Eric, I mean, she's a piece of work. She thinks she's a pop star. He's a listen, it's just crazy times. And if you focus on them, it's going to drive you nuts. It's just that
Yeah.
simple. I try not to think about them because it drives me nuts. And when I go on Blue Sky, I try to focus on the things that are news that I can then either repost or borrow or make smart comments and things like that, and not to try to focus too much on, well, I do go negative. I mean, I will, I love to call Trump an imbecile and lettuce head and, all those kinds of things. But the fact is that, we are living, it's a surreal times. It's almost, you couldn't write a television show as eerie and weird as we're living through right now.
It's true. And I always go positive. I don't go negative. People will call me out and say, I can't believe you're calling names. You're better. You should be better than that. I'm not better than that. I'm, I am who the fuck I am. I listened for 8 years to Republicans call Democrats names. If everybody wants to go high, that's cool. I'm fine with going low alone, but I know I won't be alone because that's kind of our job right now. At least I think it's my job after this election and after trying so hard to get the right person elected. Now, at this point, I feel like my job is only to tear down and destroy Donald Trump in every way I possibly can,
Yeah, yeah,
in terms
yeah,
of and Elon too,
yeah.
and Elon too.
The more influence you have, Mike, and the more people that you reach, not that you want us angry, but you want us aware and you want us to fulfill our responsibility as citizens. I think you're doing a great job, you
Well,
know.
I don't want you angry. I certainly don't want you sad. I want you aware, but I want you focused on what the problem is. We only have so many things we can do right now. Like we were talking about, sometimes you just have to stand down, let the forest burn down to the ground, and watch it grow back bigger and better. And people will say, well, people will get hurt. Yeah, I know people will get hurt, but there's nothing I can do about that now. All I can deal with is the situation in front of me to the best of my ability. And if Congress and if the DOJ isn't willing to help, that's the only option. They will destroy themselves. They will destroy a lot of people in the process. But if that's the only option right now, until we have a better option, that's what we got to do. It's unfortunate, but fuck.
Yeah, I mean, everybody that listens to you is blue. We're all blue. So we're living, when we talk, we're talking in a bubble. However, but if you motivate people, we've got, I think, 3 special elections coming up for Congress. If you help get out the vote in those 3 special elections, we got a chance of, getting back the House of Representatives. Will it happen? I don't think we will because people are lazy. But but that's kind of like our job is to motivate people and go, well, you live in this district where, there's a special election. Get out there and vote and get other people to vote. And we could stymie him if we got back the House of Representatives. So that's where you're so important. There's a factor that you have made your people, listeners aware of. These 2 special elections in New York and this one in Florida. And they're winnable. If people get out and vote, they're winnable. There's nothing to say this is because, they're mostly a Republican area. I mean, he's pissing people off right and left. And we don't
Yeah.
know that they'll get out and vote, especially in New York. I mean, he's not helping New York when their taxes go up and they don't go down. And when they see what's going on with Medicare and Social Security, they may not vote. And if people get out and do it and we can win these 3 special, we stymie him for 2 years. We stymie him until until the midterms.
You make a good point about the midterms. I think a lot of people make the mistake in their lives and in what's going on in the country right now. They see all the problems and they think to themselves, how are we going to fix this? Well, you're not going to fix all the problems. It's insurmountable. It's overwhelming. And that's where people make the mistake. You got to focus on something, get that done, move on to the next thing. And when you're talking about these midterms, that's a good focal point, at least for the short term.
Yeah.
We got two of those elections in April. Like you say, they're Republican zones, but we're in a much different situation. As Eric would point out, uh, there are no familiar names necessarily in this. There's no name recognition that's going to benefit anybody. And while while we have, we always have people reverse things in the midterms. We're not close to the midterms, but a lot of shit has happened since Donald Trump took the presidency and 3 weeks ago. And there are a lot of people already struggling. So it's feasible that one or all of these could switch. And even if just one switches, that puts us that much tighter in the House of Representatives. And because the Republicans are so divided, they're going to have trouble passing anything. It would be nice if we could get the lead and get Mike Johnson the fuck out of there. That might be a lot to ask, but that possibility is there if the work is put in.
Yeah, it's listen, we have some hope. When the midterms come, um, I don't think we're going to get the Senate back. But there are some people that are vulnerable on their side. For example, Susan Collins is going to run.
Yeah.
Um, and I think she's vulnerable. I think she's pissed off a lot of people. I don't know that. She did it again. She's shown no spine whatsoever. Biden won Maine, so it's possible. I think we have Ossoff running in Georgia, but current governor is supposed to run because he is limited for the governorship, so he's supposed to run. So that'll probably be a loss for us and us Democrats. Um, Senator Graham is very unpopular in South Carolina,
Oh, I can
extremely
bet.
unpopular. I don't even care who replaces him. Supposedly, there's an appliance salesman running who's already announced here, and he's a MAGA guy. You know what? I'm okay with that. And he knocks out Graham in the primaries. I'll be thrilled to get rid of that guy. Graham does not answer his phones, does not answer emails. The only way you can get in touch with him is through a form that you have to mail to him to his offices. And the form has various subjects that you have to, that you can
Wow.
discuss in these forms. So he is way, way full of himself. And we're talking about Republicans have been protesting at his offices here in South Carolina. So
I bet.
Lindsey is in I think Lindsey's in trouble. Trump might pull him out of it. I don't know, but he's very, very, very unpopular here. So let's say the appliance salesman wins, who's an unknown name, but he wins the MAGA vote. It's possible that the Democrats get their act together again, going up against this unknown. I don't know that the Republicans in the state will go out twice. So I don't think we're going to get back to Senate, which is good. But if we get back to House, that's a great thing. And there's a good possibility because we've seen the House switch 30, 40 seats with every election.
Right.
So, and I do think that the people that the DNC have just voted in, I don't remember their names, but I think he's got a good track record of being able to guide that organization for wins. They'll put the money in the right place. We're
You're talking
demoralized.
about you're talking about Ken Martin,
Ken
who's the
Martin.
lead of who's chair of the DNC right now. He came from Minnesota. He led the DFL party here. Yeah, I mean I don't know a lot about him, but he's better than what we had, and he's pointed in the right direction. And we had the guy in Wisconsin who was being endorsed by Pelosi, Schumer, and Hakeem Jeffries, and he lost. So that's a good signal that people are a little tired of the fucking old guard.
Oh, you're absolutely. So I just got a notification for some kind of software update. It didn't show up on your screen. But we this the pendulum's going to swing. There's no here's the only problem. Everybody thinks we have a coup d'état, and every all the outward appearances are kind of along that line. But so he has the FBI, he has intelligence, he has state, he has all that. So everything in the administration is kind of going his way. But have you seen him lately? He looks like he's near death. He's a stroke away. And we're not talking about golf on that stroke. He's a stroke away, and I don't think he's changed his diet. He looks awful. And he's a singular person in history. There's never been anybody like him before, and there isn't anybody on that side that's like him now that could take his place to get the kind of loyalty that he's gotten. I don't think his vice president could command that. He looks just like
No.
another squirmy politician. So, let's not panic. And all I see really from the national level is coup d'etat, democracy in jeopardy, fire, 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 fire. And it's sad. Do you agree? Do you think am I reading this right?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, I think the Donald Trump, Republican Party, they are bullies. And the normal strategy for a bully is to get in your face, intimidate you, and scare you. And that's what they're trying to do right now. There's only so much that they can do without the help of Congress, in spite of what they say. And you get a lot of people going out there and saying, well, what if they just ignore the judges? Donald
Mm,
Trump said he wouldn't ignore the judges, but what
right.
if he did that? Then we have a constitutional crisis.
That's
There's
right.
a guy on TikTok that I absolutely love. I got a chance to meet him in Alexandria, Virginia, when I was out there. Glenn Kirshner,
Oh, I
former
know Glenn. Yeah,
prosecutor,
yeah. I know of him.
very
I don't,
smart man.
yeah.
And I've been concerned about this. It's one thing to get all these judges say, no, you got to stop. But people will say, how do you enforce it? Well, the federal marshals enforce it. Unfortunately, the federal marshals are under the guise of the DOJ, and of course, Donald Trump controls the DOJ. And Glenn Kirshner said, "Listen, I know a lot of people from the uh, from the Marshal Service because he was a prosecutor. Most of these people, they have two jobs: to protect the decisions of the court, and to what was the other thing? Some other protection thing. But their main job, is to protect and enforce the orders of the court, not the orders of the president. And he feels like, in spite of Donald Trump's influence over the DOJ or whatever, they're going to still do what they need to do, uh, because it makes no sense for them to go against, the one main job that they have. I hope that's true. But when we're dealing with Donald Trump, we're seeing some pretty fucked up shit. Anything that he does, he's unaccountable for because he does control the DOJ. But some of the stuff he's trying to do illegally, it needs to be stopped because then we do have a constitutional crisis. And then basically everything's burnt down. In one respect, that might be good. We can start over. We'll kick Donald Trump out after everything's fucked up. But this is a very tenuous time. Nobody really knows what's going to happen. And it's scary to a lot of people. But all we can do is do what we do, fight the way we fight, and do the best we can. There's no reason to agonize about it because what's going to happen is going to happen.
Well, and the only people that are saying we're going to ignore the judges are his vice president and Musk. Trump said that he always obeys the court. And he may try to influence, he may try to bully, he may try to delay, but I see no sign of him going ahead and defying all the courts. You know, I think he have enough of an ego that he thinks he's going to go down as a great president. And I
Oh,
think
yeah.
he has enough intelligence to go, if I defy the court and cause a constitutional crisis, this could be end up really bad for me. We could end up in a case where whole states, blue states defy him.
I'm not
And
worried about Donald Trump defying the courts.
Right.
I'm worried about him being so hands off and so out of touch, and Elon Musk doing something to defy the courts. And he's just so out of it. I mean, Donald Trump doesn't know what the fuck's going on. They keep telling us about hundreds of billions of dollars of waste, but we haven't seen one shred of evidence.
Yeah,
It's
50
so
million
typical of
condoms
them.
or something. Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, and what that basically was, they said 50 million to the Hamas in Gaza. It turns out it's a part of what really happened was it was Africa, and there's an area of this country that's called Gaza, and they sent reproductive health stuff to there because of fucking AIDS and Ebola and all that other shit. It made sense. Uh, so Elon was asked about that, and he said, "You were wrong about that. What's up?" And he says, "Well, I'm not always going to be right." Well, if you're fucking with our futures, you better always be right. But he seems so confused. Elon seems a lot like Donald Trump because he just seems like he's always spitballing and he's really not sure what he's going to say. He just opens his mouth and hopes for the best.
I think you're right. Do you think that Musk will actually disobey a court order? You, Mike, yourself, do you really think he'll actually do that?
If he thinks Donald Trump can save him, but here's the problem. Um, it, some people have already said some orders have been disobeyed. That's been taken to court too. You know, they were supposed to do something and they didn't do it. I think that's probably more due to incompetence and confusion and just not very organized. But um, I know what you're saying, and I've said the same thing. Elon Musk has a problem that Donald Trump doesn't have. Elon Musk is not immune, and if
No.
Elon Musk is no longer in his position under the helpful hand of Donald Trump, they could fucking jail him. They could strip him of all his money. They could deport that motherfucker. He's in a very tenuous situation right now because he's nobody in particular. He's not an official.
Yeah, I mean, if he disobeys, and let's say the court's right below the Supreme Court, so it hasn't got to the Supreme Court yet. That's really public. It's one thing, it's a district judge, federal judge in Rhode Island. It's another if it's a full district court, in charge of the East Coast, with the Supreme Court above them. And so I think Trump will not accept the fact that Elon Musk is making him look unlawful and bad and riling up more trouble for him than it's being helpful to disobey an order. I just don't think that. He's going
Well,
to
and
get his. That's
the
all he
thing
wants.
about it is too, when they break that little brotherhood, when Donald Trump breaks up with somebody, it's always messy. He always hates the guy.
Yeah, yeah, you're right.
This is a perfect setup if you think about it. Elon Musk goes and breaks some laws, okay? And it's starting to look bad for Donald Trump. Donald Trump can stand up and be the hero. I'm not tolerating that kind of stuff in my administration. And then not only is he not protected anymore, Donald Trump sends the fucking hounds after him so he looks good. Because that's all that matters to Donald Trump.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I know you nailed it. That's what it looks
Oh, it looks like
like.
we got a little we got you frozen up here, Tony. I think we'll be okay here in a second, but I'll just talk and fill time until such time that Tony unfreezes. It's ironic that I'm in Minnesota and I don't freeze, but Tony in South Carolina is freezing up. You get these glitches with Zoom from time to time. I honestly believe that Elon Musk is in a very precarious situation. Um, and he's so arrogant that what he does is he keeps pushing the envelope. Now, he's trying to do the same things that Donald Trump tries to do, but he doesn't have as much to go back on. He doesn't have the ability to save himself like Donald Trump. Donald Trump is an unusual character. Uh, Tony, you froze up there for a second, but now you're
Yeah,
back.
yeah. So what I was thinking about doing is try to put this on use the hotspot on my iPhone.
Okay.
Failure Okay, failed to enable. So no, I'm stuck here. Looks like we get about 20 minutes before it starts to freeze, and I'm not sure what does that. I've never happens before. I do FaceTime all the time. If worst came to worst, next time we do this, I'm using my tablet, which has
Okay.
cellular as well. So that it's
Well,
just almost
we're doing fine. We're doing fine. Like I said, I'm a professional. When it freezes up, it's just seamless into some bullshit.
right.
I
And
am the
we're
king of
getting,
bullshit.
yeah, we're
So
getting
so
about
it's
out.
yeah, absolutely. I was talking about the how precarious of a situation that Elon Musk is truly in. I mean, I think the media and everybody would like us to believe that he's all powerful and could do anything. And I think you pointed out, I don't know how far he's going to push it because he doesn't have the protections that Donald Trump has. Donald Trump gets mad at him. Donald Trump could fucking hammer him just to make himself look good.
Yeah, I mean, this is a little petty, but Elon's kid putting boogers on the Resolute desk did not make Donald Trump look that good. And I bet you there were words spoken afterwards, like never bring that kid around here again, that kind of stuff. And it's those little small interactions that may provide a big enough crack for Elon to fall through later on. Yeah, Elon's not all powerful. He's still going to be rich. He's made a lot of money. I think that's the reason Trump keeps him around. He looks at that money with envy, and he's trying to figure out ways to get at some of that money. Let's face it, Elon gave him like what $250 million for the election.
Right.
Who else in the world could do that? Peter Thiel, or whatever his name is, could do it. So there's only a limited number of people who would give Trump that kind of money. So it's
Well, and
just
the
a
thing about it is of the Elon, his his fortune is kind of precarious too, if you think about it. Things
yeah,
go bad. Okay. Things are going bad with X. He's lost maybe $30 billion. That's probably nothing to him. Okay. Tesla. Tesla's sales are going down by 60% in Germany, 30% in Europe, 15% in America. You have to understand that Tesla accounts for about 150, 175 billion of his fortune.
that's right. That's
Things
right.
go bad, things go bad, and the government comes in and they strip him of all his contracts for billions and billions of dollars. This motherfucker could end up broke if he fucks around to find
Yeah,
out.
yeah. You're not wrong. What I heard, and maybe I'm wrong, is that his brother sold millions of dollars of Tesla stock and because it tanked that bad in Europe. The other thing that could happen in Europe is um, because of Elon interfering with their politics, it wouldn't, and using X as a platform to do it, it would not surprise me if the European Union did to X what they did to TikTok over here.
Right.
Wouldn't surprise me one bit if X, I mean, there are other alternatives to X, Blue Sky being one of them. I mean, I've met people from Australia and Canada and France on Blue Sky. So I think there's a really good possibility. And if that happens, X really tanks because now you've gotten rid of, the market in Europe. But Tesla is falling apart. I wouldn't, if he gave me a Tesla, I wouldn't take it. There's a guy in my neighborhood that's with one of those Tesla trucks. What a piece of shit that is.
God, that is like you might as well just paint on a side douchebag, because there was somebody on TikTok who came up with a strategy to tank Tesla's sales. Reason why people drive a Tesla because it's cool, right? So he says
What?
next time you see a Tesla, just point at them and laugh at them. See how long people buy Teslas when it ain't cool to buy a Tesla anymore.
Yeah. Well, you remember the Pinto. We're both boomers. We remember the Pinto and how they blew up.
My wife had one.
Yeah, Tesla actually has a higher rate of fires per so many cars than the Pinto did. And the
Really?
Pinto, that I read that yesterday. Some scientists went out and got the information. I don't know why Tesla gave it to them. And they did a survey per so many units. Tesla has a higher rate of flameouts over the Pinto. And the Pinto was a freaking bomb on wheels. You
Yeah,
rear
it
into
was.
those guys, you were gonna. So the same thing is happening with them and their batteries. So the Cybertruck is dead. I mean, that's they'll be around a little bit, but it's gonna go the way of the DeLorean. They'll people will own them, but they'll but they won't drive around just for the shame of it. But I think Tesla stock. I think Tesla's going to be out of Europe at some point. The Chinese are going to be allowed to market their electric vehicles, and they have some pretty freaking awesome electric vehicles.
Right.
Right now they're tariffed to make them unattractive here in the United States and unattractive in Europe. But at some point, the Chinese are going to break through. And from what I can tell in popular culture, be it young people, um, denizens of all the various apps, the Chinese are not that hated. Trump is, for some reason, um, people are now liking the Chinese that, and it's not us old boomers, but it's definitely the younger people are not, they're meeting them online, they're talking to them, and they're finding out that frankly, there's a lot going over in China that's superior to what's going on here in the United States.
Right, exactly. And the thing about it is Donald Trump is playing a big part in the popularity of China. He's going and talking about tariffs with Canada and Mexico, and China's coming in and saying, "Don't worry about it, man. We got you. We got you." And that's where Donald Trump is really, really dumb about this, is because he's not only losing business with these tariffs, he may lose business for this country and never get it back. Because why would you switch from China to America when you're
Right,
unsure about the volatility of what you're going to
right.
have to fucking deal with?
Why buy American grain when you get it from India?
Right.
Right? I mean, you just won't. And again, what comes back to what I said earlier is that the United States has squandered the trust factor that the rest of the world had in the United States. We may have been blind and we may have made mistakes throughout our history, particularly internationally, but overall we stood for something. And now we don't stand for anything. We have become another crass, mercantile country, frankly, no better than China.
Right.
China, no bones about going out and buying influence around the world. We have become that. But we're not even as good as they are now. With Trump leading us, we're not that good. So we'll have before he's done, he'll put us into a recession. And it might make '08 look like nothing.
Yeah, it could very well. I mean, Donald Trump, when he was running for president, he constantly said, prices are too high. I'm going to bring, on day one, this is what he said, on day one, we're going to start bringing down prices on energy, on eggs, on bringing down the inflation rate. Well, today it was announced that the consumer price index rose by a half a percent, something that had been going down steadily since Biden was in office. The inflation rate went up, I think maybe a half a percent, maybe not that much, but it went up. And the inflation rate, as much as it was too high in the beginning, it was constantly in a descent during uh, Biden's term in office. So what's funny now is where people are coming out and saying, well, the eggs are too high and prices are too high. They're not going down. They're not going up. And there's two things that Donald Trump tries to do. First of all, he tries to blame it on Biden, which ain't working. It was all Biden's fault when he was president. You're now president. It didn't go up until you became president. So it's on you. And then, of course, you got all the little Trump fucks, the little apologists that say, well, it's not like it could happen right away. Really, motherfucker? Because that's exactly what Donald Trump said. It would be immediate. So don't tell me we got to wait. We got to go through some things. It'll be tough and then they'll come down. No, motherfucker, that's not what you said. That's not what you said. That's not what people voted for. So now they're kind of tap dancing around this thing and trying to figure it out. And what I told people in this TikTok, take a note from the Republicans. You got the Republicans who are going to apologize for Donald Trump, and we're going to say, oh, the prices are too high. And then when that's over, we'll jump off to anything else. I'm suggesting that people every day between now and the next election bitch about prices, bitch about inflation, bitch about the cost of eggs, because clearly it worked for the Republicans. So let's take that as an example.
Well, forget eggs. Fucking Miralax is $20 a bottle.
Yeah.
Oh, swear to God. Let me give a little bit of a pushback on why I think part of the problem that Biden lost. Um, a group did a study of government statistics, economic statistics, right? And they found big flaws in the way these things are um, are put together and presented. For example, you talked about inflation. Well, when they do the CPI, they take 10,000 goods and they say, inflation is this based on these 10,000 goods. But that's not really the real picture. So this group put together the staples that people buy, and they did this every year since whatever, 2020 or so. And they found in the staples that people actually use, the milk and the other commodities, inflation was much, much higher. So Biden and those and people were saying inflation's coming down when the reality inflation was actually fairly high. It's just government statistics are misleading. And the same
Yeah.
thing with unemployment. We went with a low unemployment rate, and it's just the way that they calculate the unemployment rate. But the fact is that a lot of people were not counted, that were either not looking for jobs or were working three part-time jobs. They're not counted in this unemployment statistics. So
Right.
unemployment was actually much higher. So having said that, the perception was that the economy was strong under Biden, but the fact is it really wasn't because people were feeling real pain. Now, if you take that today and with the official records going up, it's even worse under Trump right now
Right.
because the government is still doing the same kind of calculations, but now inflation is going up. So instead of inflation really being 4%, it's really closer to 10%. Under
Right.
Biden, when it was 4% or 5%, the reality was more like 8%. And that is in the things that people actually use and in the way that we count workers who are actually working and making a living wage. Everything was undercounted and gave a rosy picture. And under Trump, that rosy picture is going to get that much worse if you really look at it the way that the scientific group who did the analysis did. So I was shocked when I read this article because I like everybody kept telling us, oh, the Biden economics and the economy under Biden is doing great. The reality is, no, it was doing great for maybe you and I, but even you
Right.
and I feeling pain when we went to the supermarket or, the only thing that didn't go up was really gasoline was at a good price because of fracking and the rest. So we weren't telling the right picture. And that is one of the things that poor Kamala had to do. She was stuck with the Biden economy. Well, now we're going to have the Trump economy, which is even going to be worse than the Biden economy. So I just wanted to bring that up. It was an article, and I can't remember where I read it. I posted it on Blue Sky. And it was singularly the most important economic article that I've read about the reality of our economy in the United States, as opposed to the way it is in the rest of the world. We weren't really doing that well because perception was a strong economy. The reality was most people were not living in that strong economy.
Yeah. Well, I always talked about the economy under Biden, and when you look at the big numbers, it does look good. And then till I sat down and talked to some millennials and stuff and realized really what the problem is. And I think prices and inflation is a problem, but I think the real main problem in this country is that has to be fixed, and the Democrats should look at it, is the way the wages in this country. Kids go to college, spend $50,000, $100,000 to go to college to get a $30,000 job, $30,000 a year job. People haven't been kept up to speed as far as how much they make with the growth of inflation. If we can find a way to get people paid a more living wage, everything gets a lot easier. More people will be buying shit, so hopefully that will counteract the inflation thing. But I think wages are our biggest problem right now because regardless of what it costs, if eggs are $6 or $3, there's still people who can't fucking afford them.
No, you're not, listen, you're not absolutely wrong. I think bigger problem is the class warfare that's being used against us. is the very wealthy and the corporations. Even if wages went up, that would just give them an excuse to raise prices across
True.
the board.
True.
So if you're paying, $20 for Netflix, now you're paying 25. If you're paying, well, who can afford a car now? Because the average car cost is $30,000. But no matter how wages go up, the elite wealthy people who basically sell everything, they have our hands in our pockets. And when they see wages go up, they just raise prices to go along with those wages. Look, I'm not an economist. I'm just not. But the fact is that what I believe is that the wealthy have been waging a war against us, mostly quiet until now. Now they're not so quiet about it. And they have been using their money to basically turn everything against the middle class and below. So if you're a blue collar worker, we're not going to get you a union, which will get you a living wage. If you're a worker, we're going to spend more, you're going to spend more on colleges because colleges are another corporation themselves. Somebody's
Right.
making money in the colleges, right? We need a brand new stadium. Your tuition is going towards a brand new stadium and the other one is still pretty good. It's not going towards your education. So it's going to be hard for us, no matter even when wages went up, to keep up as long as somebody does, as so long as the wealthy and their impact on our society is not addressed. It comes down to and we can't get there from here because our attention span is so small that we can't focus on the big picture, which are wages, which are class warfare, and which is a whole host of things. People just don't have the attention span to dig into the things that affect them and say, I need to put my vote, because really the vote is what can change this country. And the wealthy use whatever tricks they have in their arsenal to make sure that our votes don't go against them somehow. Like I
But
said, Republicans used to just quietly, they would stay up above. We wouldn't know what they're doing until a tax cut hit. And then no, but we still had unions. So as long as we had hundreds of thousands of people in the unions and they were making decent money and could afford a house, we didn't really do much about it. And now it's too late.
we're in for a big change. And if one of the parties is smart, they'll realize the opportunity. I saw some data that suggested by 2028, the presidential election and all the other elections, the biggest number of people will be from the millennial and the Gen Z era. It won't be the boomers or even the Gen X. It's going to be the Gen Z and millennial. And if that's the case, that could mean a lot of big changes in this country. It could be for the better, or it could be for the worse, depending on how much they know. But if you're a party, let's talk about the Democratic Party, you better focus on those young people and help them make more money and be able to afford things, because rich people and the government are very short-sighted. Is people like you and I get out of the system, we're not buying houses, we're not buying cars and all that kind of stuff. You got millennials and Gen Zs who are saddled with big debt from their tuition. They aren't making enough money to survive. So guess what? They don't buy houses, they don't buy cars, and that completely fucks our economy. You may not want to pay these kids a lot of money, but you fucking better if you want to stay alive.
Henry Ford understood that. Pay your workers well, they'll buy the cars from Ford. And they have forgotten that because they need to pay their boards, and their stockholders. And that's where
Right.
things have gone since GE's Jack Welch changed everything. Short-term gain for the stockholders. Um, I, the only problem is the Gen Zs and the millennials have short attention spans and they don't vote.
Right.
And then in this election, which I had hope for them, because
I
we
did
looked at
too.
2020 and we looked at Obama and we looked at 2022, and I said, okay, all right, things are changing. And then 2024 came around and we had a bro backlash. And I don't think the Democrats are smart enough to figure out that there are two genders, not just one gender that you need to protect and cherish and yes, and hoist up. The males in those demographics feel left behind, unappreciated, and they either don't vote or they voted for Trump in record numbers. So
Right.
now I don't, once again, the parties, the wealthy have figured out, okay, this is how we stop that demographic. We'll split the genders somehow. And they managed to do that in 2024. Now, once again, they had the perfect candidate in Donald Trump. And I don't know that there's another one of him, but that's something I'm going to be looking for in the midterms because women do go out and vote. And so the midterms look pretty good for us because the women will vote, the young men won't vote at all. So we have a good chance in there. But come 2028, I'm not so sure. I'm just not so sure anymore. It just seems like there's a giant backlash right now by the young men against the libs. And it's because I think they perceive us as disrespectful and the party of women. So I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think that's probably true, and I think you're right. They need to widen their scope a little bit as to who they're taking care of. But with what's going on now, what we're seeing with Donald Trump, we're hearing about the fuck around and find out crowd, the Republicans who voted for Donald Trump and are now getting bit in the ass like the farmers. This is going to happen more and more to people. There are people struggling right now, people losing jobs. I know of somebody yesterday told me he lost a job that was indirectly because of Donald Trump's tariffs. Um, does that does that change the attitude of presumably Trump voters who get burned, or are they just too stupid and they keep voting against their self interest?
I think that when it comes to young people nowadays, and I find this even with myself, is that my attention span is so short because
Yeah.
constantly on apps and we are at information overload. I don't know that they even can recognize that they're getting screwed. I really don't, because what everybody seems to want is what is going to get my attention, what's going to give me that shot of dopamine, you know? And Trump provides the WWE factor in politics.
Right.
So no matter what you say, no matter how bad he does something, he's entertaining. So I just don't know if politics is completely now going to change to be an entertainment model and he who can entertain, in our time and in the generations past, you listen to politicians speak and there's a level of intelligence and an intellectualism to the way that they speak that you just don't see anymore.
No, you
Now,
don't.
speak down to the masses because that's the only way to get their attention. And I think that the millennials and the Gen Zs are probably even worse than we are. Because if you don't get their attention, they don't care. And I think the Republicans are really good at simple messaging, and they seem to be really good at getting your attention on a particular issue, much better than the Democrats. Democrats tend to just say, well, that's a little bit more complex, so let's explain this in detail. And you can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
AOC is probably our best communicator, and Jasmine Crockett. They are our best. That's who we need to be pushing up to get the attention of young people again and get them excited. But we need a male version of those two women. We need somebody
Yeah.
like them, but a male version of that. Moskowitz is kind of close, I guess. He's entertaining. But if we don't, we're not going to win because the Republicans have whole, I don't know, think tanks devoted on how to beat us and how to provide. And they saw what Trump did, and they may come back with somebody else kind of like him, but different, but entertaining.
It seems like um, this country has become, as a whole, as the electorate, has become less sophisticated, shorter attention span.
Yep,
It's kind of like the difference between the news on television now. If we were to watch the news we watch now and go back to the 70s, we'd call that tabloid news, you
that's
know.
right. That's right. Good
And
point.
and so now we have a less sophisticated electorate because of the information that's being fed to them. So you can cry about that, you can bitch about that, but what I'm saying too is, okay, that's not good. We don't like that, but That's the rules. That's the game now. So we got to play in that game. As much as we may not like it, as much as we may be disgusted by how unsophisticated it is, but that's what it's going to take.
Yeah, we need some country stars. We need our version of The Rock, you know. I'm
Yeah.
gonna be this guy and I'm gonna tear him apart. And oh, we need all that. And we need to work. It has now become the Coliseum, and it's the Coliseum of ideas. And you have to entertain the masses to keep them from overthrowing you or to be on your side. I mean,
Sure.
the ancient emperors, they understood that. And now we need to figure out as Democrats, how do we didn't help ourselves by not putting AOC in charge of oversight committee,
No, we did not.
and so we put this old guy. I haven't heard shit about that old guy since he got in there. And Schumer got beat up pretty bad on Blue Sky for, I don't know, I guess they did a news conference kind of thing. And we're going to win. We're going to win. He needs to go. He needs to go, and we need to replace him with
He's weak.
somebody else. He's very weak, and that doesn't help us. Pelosi needs to go. Pelosi, I love Pelosi. I thought she was a great speaker, but it's time. She's got to go. She's hindering us now rather than helping us. And they just don't, they need to go away because we need to bring in some fresh blood that understands young people. We need to have young people, and we need to have both genders of young people running for offices now that are well spoken, thoughtful, and can communicate with their peers because we're going to need those peers in the future.
We need Elon Musk kid to go on the House floor and go up to Pelosi and go, "Why don't you shush up and go away?" Because that's exactly, you're exactly right. She
Needs
needs
to
to
go.
do that.
He needs to
The,
put boogers on all those people.
I didn't see the part with the boogers, but I gotta like that.
Well, it's all over everything.
Having a 4-year-old granddaughter, I know about boogers, passing gas, and saying the F word. It all happens.
It all
That's what
happens.
4 and 5-year-olds do.
Well, look, we're doing our part tonight. We've kind of covered quite a bit. I'm sorry. Hopefully, I didn't dominate the conversation.
Oh no, 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 no.
When I come on the show, I try to do my research. I try to be as well read as I possibly can, and try to bring something new and thoughtful to this audience. If I can. And
Yeah, absolutely.
I
Well,
appreciate having me
that's
on.
why I have people like you on. It makes me look good. I don't have to talk as much or work as hard. I look at things differently than most people. I'm kind of a big picture guy when it comes to details. People like you and Eric and Will and Old Soul, they give the details, and it's a nice balance. And it's not like I don't get plenty of time to talk. I talk plenty, so it's all right if somebody else has something to say.
Well, you're my news source, and unfortunately, I had to get a new phone. Long story short, for those that don't know, I run a lightsaber academy, and one night we were breaking, and my phone fell out of my pocket in a rainstorm, got run over by a car, so I had to get another phone. Well, guess what? They don't have TikTok anymore in in the App
Oh,
Store. So I don't have TikTok on my phone. It's still on my tablet. So I have to pull my tablet out to watch TikTok and watch you, Mike.
I saw somebody online suggest something. Well, first of all, they suggested go to TikTok.com and you can watch TikTok there on your phone if you want to. But
Oh, okay.
apparently on TikTok.com, there's a place you can download the app too. So check that out. Go to TikTok.com
I
and check
will.
around. You might be able to download the app there.
I mean, that would be great because while we're on TikTok, I have no hope that they're going to keep it. Uh, they
I'm not sure either.
he's put the vice president in charge of it, and that's a kiss of death. He don't care about it anymore. Not going to help him. He's not going to run for election. It's a done thing. So that I have to find whatever the next version of that is because I thoroughly enjoy that, and then hopefully talk you into being whatever app that is. Because you and I talked about Clapper. You weren't thrilled about Clapper. Yeah,
Not
you don't know
really.
much about Neptune, I think.
But we'll see what happens with that. I'm on YouTube. You can find me. Everything you can find on TikTok, you can find on YouTube and the podcast on YouTube. You can find me on Blue Sky, all the same stuff on Blue Sky. You can find me on Substack. All the same videos are there.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not hard to find me if you need to. And I think we got frozen again. That's all right because we were at this point where we were going to wrap things up a little bit. We had a chance to talk to Tony. I'm sure Tony would say thanks for coming on and thanks for letting me on and hi to all you folks and bye to all you folks. Uh, but we're going to wrap things up here. I got to do a live a little later. This is going to air on Thursday. The live will air on Friday, so we'll just kind of hang in there and do what we do and try to keep you up to date with all the happenings around the country, around the world, for that matter. For those of you spending the time to talk to me, I hey Tony, Tony's back again. I'm just wrapping things up here. Um, so
Yeah.
so you can give your outro and then we'll wrap things up here. I got to go
Yeah.
do a live in a little bit.
Yeah, so listen, this has been an absolute pleasure. Next time we talk, it'll be a few weeks because I wait for the news cycle to
Right.
generate enough for me to talk about. I'm using my tablet next time because we have a cellular connection with the tablet rather than whatever was happening with my Mac. Listen, thank you so much again. I mean, I really appreciate it. I read the remarks when I'm on from the audience because I'm still new at this
Absolutely.
kind of and audience, I appreciate it. Mostly all the remarks are always positive. They don't always say, "Hey, good job, Tony," but there's enough feedback on there that says makes this old guy feel good that I'm doing a good thing here. So, for those of you that in Blue Sky, look up T-Night02 on Blue Sky. I'm there. I'm very creative with what I post there. I'm up to 10,000 followers within a couple weeks.
That's
And
impressive.
yeah, well, I'm having fun. I'm having fun, and I look the world over and go, okay, what do I like? So I do, Mark Twain. I'll go in and get quotes from Mark Twain or Socrates and throw that on there, and then I'll throw in something that I saw on Facebook, or I'll steal something from somebody else and post it. And it's just another way of being creative and trying to influence people. I don't like all the women contacting me because I get a lot of women contacting me. I always say, hi. I'd like to meet you. And then I have to go
Yeah.
ahead and have the conversation.
I got sad news for you here. All
Yeah.
those women meeting you are just fucking bots.
Oh,
There
yeah, yeah,
isn't a
yeah.
there isn't a scantily clad 22-year-old that's
No.
really interested in you or
It,
I.
it's some dude sitting in a tent somewhere in some
Yeah.
country, trying to get money out of me. So, yeah, for those on Blue Sky, if somebody comes up to you and says, you got an interesting face and we'd like to do a picture, we'll give you $500 for a picture. Block that person because that is not that is they don't care about you. Nobody wants to look at this face. Well, Mike, thank you so much for again.
Thank
So
you.
and then,
Thank you.
again for Aiken Saber Academy for those interested in lightsaber stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. You can check you on Facebook, right?
That's where I am. I'm working on a website. So I got the website set up and I still have to figure out how to edit it. So it was a company that put it up for me because it was free, and
Yeah.
I pay maybe $10 a month for it instead of 60 like other people. But I got to do my own editing. So I'm still learning how to use WordPress. WordPress is what you use for websites, from what I understand. And I got a lot of
I've
pictures.
tried.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard for an old man.
Yeah, I've tried it and I don't bother anymore. I can't wrap my mind around it. Well,
No,
Tony,
no.
thank you very much. And for
Yes,
those of
sir.
you listening, thank you for taking the time. I hope you have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.